Okay, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Welcome, welcome. Happy Thursday. We are going for another live interview, and I'm excited about this one because, this one is all about soul gratification in our lives and our businesses. And we may not get that, but I find the more I step into who I am, the more I'm understanding it, if I think it's correct. So please let me welcome Sierra Garana.
Rana, you got it.
She is a soul gratifying coach, medium, and speaker who guides leaders, pioneers, and generational curse breakers through their darkest moments to bring them towards their light. Before starting her coaching career, Ciara was a licensed massage therapist and held upper management positions for over a 12-year span. After a successful but stressful, no kidding, career, Ciara's shift into what ignited her soul, helping people live in the moment with an undeniable divine aura. She has become the go-to person for others who have lost their way. Ciara channels spirit to help create authenticity, freedom, love, and joy with ease. Ciara is a devoted wife and mother who enjoys spending time with her family, cooking, traveling, and sports. She is available for transformational coaching, business consulting, and healing retreats. And guys, I'm going to second that, we have these successful careers that we all go on, but then when you let it go, it feels so good. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me again. I'm very excited to be back.
Yes, I'm excited. I'm excited to get onto this topic because I think there are so many people out there who don't even understand what it means by soul gratification, don't understand following into what they believe because there's so much noise out there.
Right. And for me, when I first created that title, I was kind of like, well, what the heck is it? Right. I was like, sounded like a made up word, which it kind of is essentially. And I officially gave myself, I'd say through spirit, that label. And I'm not a big label person. And I spent the past 3 years really uncovering what that meant. What does soul gratification really mean? And we were chatting prior to this about how it's really about being in alignment to your soul plan. It's really doing what you're here to do, your actual purpose. And the way I coach people over the past 6 years of coaching, it's come down to what sparks joy, what really makes you happy, what is going to be something that you can wake up every day and do, what's something that you never want to retire from, right? We live in a society that we're starting to break free from of you got to stay in a job that sucks your soul out of you, and you're burnt out, you're unhappy, you're disconnected to your family, you're disconnected from yourself. And that's what happened to me years ago. When I was in my careers, I was working 4 jobs and then got a full-time job when my kids hit school age, because I was pretty much staying home with them because childcare costs. And then I got a full-time job right before I took the leap into entrepreneurship. And I burnt out so bad in 6 months, like 6 months is all it took, to the point that I could not walk. My back gave out on me. I had a fibromyalgia flare up. I couldn't walk for 4 days. And I was like, what am I going to do with myself? I have 2 young kids at the time. I have 3 now, but I had 2 young kids. And I was going to head back into waitressing because I couldn't afford the childcare on top of like the working. So I was going to go back to waitressing, and literally like 2 weeks before I was going back to waitressing, my back gave out. And then everything kind of just shifted for me, where things started dropping in and like signs were dropping in of, hey, like, let's try this out. I had this idea for a business for a long time. I was just afraid to do it. And I was like, there's no way. I have no money, I have no time, and I have no energy to get this up and running. And at the time, nobody was really online doing anything online. It was like 2018. It was just starting to pick up with online coaching. And I was in bed laying there, and I said to God, I was like, if you let me walk again, I'll start that business. I was like, I'll just do it, because I was fighting it already for like a year and a half. And the second that I agreed to do it, it was like activation, 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 all in a row. And when I say activation, it was like moments just kept happening where alignment kept happening. People kept coming into my life, opportunities kept coming in because I was fully surrendered to what my soul was asking of me. I could stop there if you have a question. I feel like you might have a question on that.
Well, you know what? I because there's, and I love the words like alignment and stuff, but some people may not get it. I mean, I get it. I understand, like, because it's like all of a sudden it's like shit, everything, it's the puzzle pieces snap into place. If you could maybe just expand upon the alignment piece, because I think that's awesome. And I think people need to know what does that kind of look like? And for everybody that will look a little bit differently, but how did that look for you, that alignment piece?
Yeah. So the way I break this down the most is like, say you're planning to take a road trip, right? But you have a map, but you don't create the route. And you're just going to kind of wing it. You're going to trust your intuition. You're going to have a broad spectrum of what you're looking at, right? You look at this map and you say, well, I could go this way, or I could go this way. It'll be a little quicker if I go here. And then while you start traveling, you start to hit some roadblocks, right? And then you have to shift, you have to move, it's the universe's way of saying, don't go that way, right? It's kind of pivoting. You're always going to get to your final destination. You're always going to get to where you need to be. The destiny or the destination is going to be the same. The journey is going to look different, right? And it could look different for everybody. And alignment is all about choices, right? So it's the choices that we make that create that journey and create that path. And on the roadmap, like, you're always going to get there. It doesn't matter to whatever it is that you predetermined before you came here. I'm a big believer in soul plans. I'm a big believer in, you kind of already chose everything that you're experiencing before you came here, in multiple ways. So I feel we're always presented with 2 to 3 options. And then we get to decide what's going to give me a lesson, what's going to take me, a little bit longer to get there, and what's going to get me there the quickest. So those are the 3 choices we're kind of presented with at all times. And the alignment of it is, when you're in alignment, it's usually going to take you there the quickest. You don't have those roadblocks, you don't have the detours, you don't have the lessons, or you're always going to get a lesson, but it's not going to be as deep, and you're not going to repeat cycles as much. I've done it all. I've done all three routes. And we're energy, we're energetic beings, right? We have the spirit. I saw something earlier today that the soul is essentially your conscious mind and your heart in alignment to each other. So working in sync together. And that would be more of like your soul plan. It's like when your mind and your heart are in alignment or in sync, they're going to guide you to the quickest destination, right? And that's where you get that happiness from. A lot of people are walking on earth not in alignment. So that means that they're living for other people. They're making choices that don't benefit them. They're constantly miserable, angry, unsatisfied with life, right? And everything is hard. Everything is, I don't want to say victim. Yeah, challenging. Like, they really have this victim mentality of, nothing works for me. Everything has to be so difficult. Everything has to be so hard. But if you only knew that by choosing yourself, right, choosing what's in alignment to you, choosing your heart, it's not going to be that way. It's not that things come without challenges, but it's just going to be a little easier because you're doing what's best for you. And if you're doing what's best for you, it's going to work out.
Yeah. And I actually love that alignment, how you described it. It's choices. And there are things that you're going to do in your life. I left my job and everybody's like, are you crazy?
Yep.
Yes, I am.
I think you have to be a little crazy.
Yeah, but I think too, people hold on to it and they hold on to it and they hold on to it until they totally deplete and drain themselves. Then they get sick and it's like, for me, and I'm sure for you, you're living for yourself, you're living for your family, you're living to live a life of creativity, of freedom. And that's a whole different set of instructions, directions.
Well,
Yeah.
you operate from expression, right? And
Mhm.
desires versus like being told what to do, conditions, right? Societal norms. Um, I'm a second child, so maybe it's the rebellious side of me. I've never done what other people have told me to do, right? My mom will tell you, like, she's like, you just do everything the opposite of what people say. But that's how I live my life. And it was very, I've always found happiness. So why would I go any other way? Why would I do anything different? Um, and there is that fine line of tiptoeing between, the hot term right now, narcissism, right? Between being selfish and being narcissistic, where you don't care about anybody else, but everything that you do when it's in alignment to you, it's not going to affect other people in a negative way. It's always going to be the highest timeline, right? Your highest self, your highest timeline, as in doing what's best for you, doing what's going to send you to that soul gratification. And it's always tiptoeing that line between, well, you're being selfish. Oh, we'll hear that a lot, right? Because there's always going to be that darker side to it, where people will question us, still, have criticism against what you're deciding. But ultimately, they're not the ones in your shoes. They're not the ones that, wake you up every day. So it's really just saying, hey, do I love myself enough today? And I use love, because to me, that's how I operate. Do I love myself enough today to give me the best life? Right. Someone might
Mhm.
say, do I appreciate myself? Am I grateful for right? The wording could change, but for me, it's always about self-love. Because my soul gratification, my soul plan, I'm the vessel of love too. If you're into human design, I am motivated by love. That's what I do. I have to love everything that I do. It has to bring me satisfaction. It has to bring me joy. If it doesn't, it's frustration and I'm not in alignment. And that was a lesson I had to learn. Like, the more frustrated I get, the more I know I'm off my course.
Yes. I love that because there's so many things here.
Sorry.
So first off, this whole concept of being selfish is crap. Like I
Yeah,
really do believe, unless you're deliberately hurting somebody,
correct.
this, and that's a whole set of other conversations.
Yeah.
But unless you're selfish, to me, doesn't mean anything. To me, it's I am being self-full because I'm taking care of myself first. Because if I can't take care of myself, I can't take care of you. And
Yeah.
whatever love I'm trying to pour into myself, I can't pour into anybody else. Like
Right.
that whole, and this whole like narcissistic thing, there are a lot of narcissists out there, but I think there might be a little tiny bulb of it in all of us, because I
Oh
think
yeah.
being an entrepreneur and having your own business, there's a little tiny wisp of it there. I
Mhm.
think you need that
Yep.
to have your own business. But again, there is that darker side, that manipulative guilt
Right.
side of that. I love that you're also saying, you know, those questions that you ask in the morning, getting out of bed. I don't think people even fathom. And it's even entrepreneurs now who have a successful business. They're kind of stuck in it because they want to pivot or they want to do something else, and they feel like this is the only avenue. Is it making you happy? Is it making you joyful? Are you being creative? Are you fulfilling your highest potential? And to everyone, that's something different. So that's something for each one of us to figure out. But there's so much to soul gratification. And I think a big part of it, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, is not feeling bad about it, not feeling bad about that journey to finding yourself.
Yeah. I think on the flip side of that narcissism, we gaslight ourselves a lot too, out of doing what's best for us, right? And it's conditioned. We're so conditioned to not operate in self-interest. We're so conditioned to operate as a community, right? This unity vibe, which, yes, that you can be united, but the whole point is, when you have unification of a society or a collaborative or a community, you all operate separately and it flows together, and that's how it works. But most people think you have to be the same. We've been so conditioned to be robotic. The 9 to 5, we have to get up every day and go to work. We're so conditioned to skip what's best for us. We're so conditioned to stay in routine. That is not conducive to our energy. That's not conducive to our innate gifts that we have. It's not conducive to why we're here. And we're starting to see that break down, right? Where, especially when COVID happened, like, people got into doing things that they weren't doing, that they never had the time to do. They never had the thought to do it. And one of the things that I ask my clients every time on our first call, because my coach did this to me when I started, getting into the coaching realm, she was like, if you can live your Disney dream life, what would it look like? And I told her, 4 years ago or so, I said, I'd live in a warmer state. I'd have an RV. My kids would be homeschooling. I'd be traveling. I'd be speaking. I'd be doing all these things. I'd be happy. And I remember crying on this call because to me at the time, we were 2 houses back. So we were living in Massachusetts. And I was like, that's never going to happen. That's so like, that is like, that the ideal dream is never going to happen. And fast forward 4 years later, we've moved twice. I live in South Carolina now, nice and warm. I get to go to the beach every day. My husband works from home. We bought an RV in February. We had our third baby. My kids are homeschooled and I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do because I asked for it. Right. And although I doubted and I had a little bit of insecurities around the journey to get there, I never put a timeline to it. I never said it has to be here. I thought it would be like 10 years out, right? I was like, that's going to take forever to get there. We're not going to be, but then again, it was that alignment. The more I said yes to myself, the more opportunities came through where we could sell our house and make the money to buy the next house and then sell that house to make the money to buy this house or to make this move down here. My husband got a new job. Like all these things started shifting and happening for us because we were willing to take the chances. We were willing to put ourselves first. We were willing to look internally and say, hey, what's working for me and what's not working for me? What can I let go of? And there is a grieving process that comes with that too. We had to grieve a lot throughout the past 4 or 5 years of this journey. Grieve our old selves, grieve family, grieve, the lifestyle we were living before. But it opened us up to so much abundance that we had no idea was possible.
And I like that you brought up grieving because and it's an interesting concept because as you grow and change, it's almost like, and I've done it myself. So when I say this, it's like you're holding back here, like, I'm not letting it go. I'm not letting it go.
Yeah.
But, and then when you do, it's like, you're sad that you let it go, that you are moving to the next phase. And it's like that comfortability that you had in that other zone. It's this going forward into this area that I have no idea what the hell is going to happen.
Yeah.
You just don't.
Yeah.
You're going on your intuition, you're going on trust, you're going on saying yes to yourself, but everything's up in the air. You're waiting to see how it all lands too.
Yeah. And, one of the things my coach first said to me at the time was, you have to be the pioneer, because there was no one that did what I wanted to do, right? There was none of my family works, like they all worked till retirement, right? They never left really the hometowns that they were in, or if they did, it was not too far. It was a very conditioned lifestyle growing up between me and my husband. And even with my husband, he struggled with change. So like he was afraid, more afraid than I was, but I had to hold on to faith, right? I had to really up my level of faith to kind of hold it for him too, because he was like, oh, I trust you, but I don't know, like this is going to be really difficult. Luckily, knock on wood, he's agreed every time and it's always been good for us. But that was the thing. It was really like, if we're willing to let go of what no longer serves us or what doesn't serve us, what comes in its place? And detaching completely to the outcome is what we really needed to do. And when you detach to an outcome, it's one of those things where you have to be okay with if it doesn't work out. You have to be okay with if there's, a mistake or things don't go as planned. We had that happen when we moved down here last year. My plan was to be nomadic more and kind of rent out some Airbnbs to see if we liked it. And then we traveled to another state if we didn't really like it here. And I got pregnant last year, right before we moved. And I was like, well, there goes the RV, because we were going to buy an RV and do that too. I was like, well, there goes the RV thing, because I can't do that. And I have to be in a permanent location, at least. Being pregnant, I was high risk. And about a week after we got down here, I had a miscarriage. So it was a lot of, the unknown, but I had to still be grateful and show gratitude for the fact that we still got down here. We still were doing part of what we wanted to do. It just looked different. And then a year ago this month, we moved into this house, right? We weren't going to buy a house. We were so against buying. I was against buying a house. My husband needed it, but we bought the house, and then I got pregnant again. And now we have our little rainbow baby. And it's like all these things, if I were to hold on to the plans that I was making, it would have never turned out the way that it turned out, and how much better it turned out for us.
Yeah. I would love if you could talk a little bit, because detachment is such an
Hard.
obscure thing.
Yeah.
And not only that, it's not that easy,
Nope.
detachment. People are so set on a goal, or they're so set on something that they almost block the things, amazing things coming to them. So
Yeah.
that's pretty big.
Yeah. And for me, and I know a lot of people that I work with are very similar in this, especially in the entrepreneurial world. I'm a recovering high performer, right? Like I was one of those people that is very systematic and logical and can perform at this higher speed. Which kept me in these routine. I was always looking for the next best thing. High performance is a very addictive behavior. There's a lot of codependency to it. So, and it's very results driven. So you're constantly having to figure out probabilities, and you're constantly trying to figure out the result, and you do attach to outcomes. And the outcome is always for it to just be done. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad, it's just to be done. So the more that I started to detach and unfold the parts of me that wasn't natural to me. Being a high performer was not natural to me. Although I was really great at it, it's not who I was underneath. So I had to do this discovery of self and really look at the stories I was telling myself and say, am I really happy doing, getting results for people, doing sales for people all the time, doing this, doing that. And the more that I said, no, that's not me, because that's really detachment. No, that's not me. That's not a part of me. That's not my story. And you're just kind of disconnecting from it and distancing yourself from these stories that we tell. And as you're doing it from disconnecting and detaching to the past stories, you also start to disconnect to the future stories, because with the high performance comes a lot of anxiety, right? Anxiety of the future, making sure that you're going to hit the goals, hit the quotas, stuff like that. So I was constantly anxious. I was constantly like, well, I have to do this. I would like play it out. Like, here's the scenario. And I never got to enjoy the present moment. I was always stuck in the past of, okay, so risk assessments, this is the probability. If this happens, this is what's going to happen next. So, like, it was constant chatter in my mind. Then it was the anxiety of the future of, well, this could happen, that could happen, right? Fearful again. It was always fear-based. Past and present was fear-based. So how did I get to the present moment? How could I get there? And it was just calming myself down, really slowing down, really doing things that kind of sat me down, really like, okay, like, what can I do to bring peace? How can I be in the present moment? And it was really just focusing and being intentional. And you were talking about that earlier, about being intentional and really saying, hey, right now I'm here with Trisha. I should not be thinking about the call I have at 5 o'clock, right? I should be here with you, engaged in our conversation, not worrying about, not checking my phone, not worrying about calls I have next, not worrying about what my kids are doing downstairs, right? I'm here with you. And that really requires intimacy. And that really and people think intimacy always has to do with like sex and desires and stuff like that. But intimacy is really a connection of self. It's really like, can I be present with you, right? Connecting to myself through you and connecting with you. And that's the detachment, because you're detaching to timelines and you're coming and connecting here. You're attaching to what's right in front of you. And that's kind of the roundabout way that I got to this detachment stage and how I had to work, because we can be connected to everything, which we are at all. I mean, we have phones, so we're constantly connected to something, right? But we can be detached. right? We can be connected to everything, detached to nothing. Like we don't have to be or attached to nothing, because it's the attachment that kind of drains the energy, that pulls us in the directions that we're not supposed to be in.
Yeah. And we definitely, there is a big addiction to our telephones.
Yeah. I mean, I have it, but it is what it is.
Yes, I do too, but I have gotten myself to a point where I take my phone at either 7, 8 o'clock and it literally gets hidden. I
Yeah.
actually put it on the charger, which is behind pictures, so I don't see it anymore. It's done for and it's done for the night. Like I'm not picking it up again. It doesn't matter what phone calls, texts, I'll deal with it in the morning.
That's good. I can't. My kids yell at me. I told them they're allowed to yell at me if I'm on my phone too much. But that's the thing, right? So in the moment, if I'm texting on my phone or just scrolling or whatever, and my son's trying to talk to me, I'm not being present with him, right? And he'll be like, Mom, get off your phone. I'm trying to talk to you, right? And I gave him permission because we're constantly moving and we're not perfect. And the addictions are something that it'll move to something else, right? So like the high performance addictions, it can go to drugs, it can go to alcohol, it could go to sex, it could go to porn, it could go all these things, to the phone, right? It could go to the phone. My addiction is my phone. I love being on my phone, which I'm working to detach from that, right? But it's also how I run my business, and it gives me the freedom and flexibility to be with my kids, and I can work from my phone. So I have that fine line where sometimes I'll make the excuses to be on it because I'm like, well, I'm working. And he's like, no, you're not, you're on TikTok. Right. So he'll call me out on it, or my daughter will too. But it's just a ever evolving like lesson. It's just one of those things. We're never not going to be addicted to something.
And this everything that we've talked about is truly self-gratification in our lives and in our business.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Because like I love to work and I love doing what I do. So I'm addicted to working, right? The workaholics. We tend to be that high performance workaholics. But I've really learned to kind of shut myself down. I really learned to have the times where I'm working. I go more energetic based now. I used to do time blocking, but now I'm like, well, what do I have the energy for? Right. And that was kind of how I broke away from being in that hustle mentality of I need to be doing stuff at all times. It's what do I have the energy to do today? If it's content creation, then I do that for the time that I have that energy. If it's nothing, then I'll sit and watch TV all day. Like, I don't care. I've really learned to just in this new age or new paradigm of the collective that we're shifting into, we really have the freedom to do whatever we want. We really have the freedom, especially with the invention of social media and electronics. So many people hate it, but they're not understanding the freedom that it's gifted to us. We tend to focus only on the negative side of it, but I'm like, I could sit and talk to clients in Australia and, on a Zoom call and make money and not have to leave my kids, right? Like that's the life I desired. That's the life I dreamt of. And that's the life I created for myself because I went after it, right? Because we are technically responsible for all of these creations that we have at our hands because we think about it. And I know, we both worked with the same coach where it was like our thoughts, right? Our thoughts are so powerful, and she preaches that a lot. And it's one of those things where the more you think about something, the more it's going to come to you, good or bad. It doesn't matter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. If you're going to be on that negative loop, that is what you're going to definitely be bringing in. And people don't realize it. They've created these ruts in their brains that this is their pattern, this is their paradigm, and they keep just going straight back to it. It's that self-awareness piece saying, I want a different end result. And to get that different end result, I have to cut this thought process and start a whole new thought process.
Yeah.
I love that you're saying you do everything by energy instead of time blocking. Me personally, I am sick of visibility and hustle. Those are two terrible words. You have to be visible and you have to work and be in action. But to be hustle and to be visible just to be for these things is very draining. It's very depleting because you're trying to be everything to everyone all the time.
Right.
And busyness to be busy, again, is another depleting energy. So it's that, where are my energy levels today? Where am I going to use what I have to do most? And it's okay, because I was sick and I was like, you're lazy, you're not doing anything,
Yeah,
because I'm so used to being on the
yeah,
go. Like for me, I'm
right.
go, go, go. So I'm like, oh my God, Trisha, lie in bed and leave yourself alone. And it's part of that,
Yeah,
gotta be busy, gotta move, gotta go, this perfectionism. And
yeah.
it's almost restructuring ourselves to to be in that soul gratification.
And it is really creating a ritual for yourself, is what I've learned. Because when we're constantly that hustle and visibility and stuff like that, that is that it's not energetically efficient, and it's the spiritual hygiene behind that is so bad because you're constantly, like you said, on the go. And like my biggest thing was inviting mysticism into my life, inviting the magicalness that I have, right? Inviting that intuitiveness, um, the actual divine feminine being. And again, like I'm not a huge label person, but that energy of restfulness, that energy of nurturing, that's more magnetizing than doing, because you're being it and you're projecting that energy out. It's going to magnetize to you, right? It's gonna bring things in much easier than you burning, right? Burning that energy, because you're pushing that energy out, right? That hustle mentality, that hustle energy. And that's what a lot of people do, is they're constantly pushing their desired future out because they're constantly trying to do things, right? I'll retire when I'm 65, I'll do this. It's like, well, you can retire at 35 if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
You just have to decide, right? We're back to choices, we're back to alignment, right? It's just a decision, because there's no right or wrong. You're going to choose what you want to experience in this lifetime. um, and that's like that spiritual hygiene is really what rituals can you create for yourself. So again, it's that if time blocking works for you, do the time blocking. If the energy questions work for you better, use the energy, check in, whatever you want to call it. If some days you need to just shut off completely, then shut off completely. There's no, and I think this is a thing that really has always motivated me, is like, if I'm not going to get yelled at or get in trouble, I'm going to do it, right? And like, again, I'm second child, second born, I'm super rebellious. But what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to tell me no? If I'm not going to get arrested for doing what I'm doing, or like death or any of that stuff, like what's the worst that's going to happen? That's the question I ask all the time. What's the worst that's going to happen to me if I do this, or if I don't do this, right? And it's usually not that bad. I can't come up with an answer enough. And again, if I get to that answer, well, I could get arrested, then I'm not going to do it.
Mhm.
It's having that fine line. And that's really been a self-motivator for me, is just like, what's the worst that's going to happen, right? And sometimes what's the worst that's going to happen is I'm going to be deeply unsatisfied. I'm going to be really unhappy with myself. I'm going to regret this. I'm going to question this every day of like, why did I not do that? Or why did I do that? And that's kind of my judgment zone. Like that's kind of my self-awareness checks of like, whether I do something or don't do something. It really is that yes, no for me, because I am, in human design, a sacral authority. Like it really has to be a yes for me to do something. If I'm questioning it internally, I'll give myself space to revisit it again later. But that's the thing. It's really understanding how you operate. And that's why, like, I love human design. I love natal charts. I love astrology charts. They're tools for us to use, not to live by, but tools to use to understand how we operate. You can't go around using the excuse of, well, I'm a generator, a hermit, I'm a Gemini, I'm this, that. People use those as excuses. But if we use them as tools, you'll realize how much quicker and how much further along in your life you can get.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because I actually, when I did do these interviews, the last time I was doing them, I remember inviting somebody, and she's like, we're in Mercury retro. I can't do interviews."
Yeah.
And I went, "Okay." Meanwhile, Walt Disney created Disney World. I believe it was during a retrograde. So it's like, you know, and for me, there's things I've learned from both my astrology chart and my human design chart that goes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't feel crazy anymore.
Yeah.
Like the pieces of me made sense. but it's a
Mhm.
tool. It's a tool to keep moving forward. It's not a,
Right.
too many people are looking at it. I can't do this because this is retrograde, that's happening, this is
Yeah.
shifting, that.
And with retrogrades, it just kind of makes things harder. But if your planets are in alignment when you were born in retrograde, it's actually going to be better for you, right? More
Mhm.
beneficial. And I find it funny because my daughter, my newest baby, she's her human design is a reflector. And like that, when I did her chart, when I pulled her chart the day literally I'm in the hospital holding her and I'm like, let me look at this chart because I could already feel it coming off of her, what she was. And I was just like, oh man, this is gonna be a ride. And it's so funny because she's only 4 weeks old and like already acting as if like she's her chart, right? Her incarnation cross. It's a lot about confusion and all of her centers are open. So
Mm.
she takes on everybody's energy. Like she's just but then she reflects ourselves to us, back at us. And it's so funny because I'm like, she's already as a newborn fulfilling her soul purpose and her incarnation cross of what she's here to do. And she's very curious. And when I post pictures of her, people are like, she looks so curious. I'm like, if you only knew her incarnation cross, like that's what it's about. It's like curiosity and questioning life. And like every picture is always like, why am I here? Why am I on earth? Why did I come here? Like that's the face that she gives every time. And it's so funny because if we were to really look at it, the incarnation crosses to me are the biggest and most important aspect because that's the lessons you're here to learn. That's the theme of your life. And I look at my other kids, my oldest daughter, she's education. So every time I'm around her, I'm learning something. I am constantly learning something. And my son is defiance. And that is him to a T. He will show you a new way of living and a new way of doing things at all times. And yes, he will push every single button that you have. My husband's a sleeping phoenix, and that's all about self-discovery. And when I'm with him, that's all I do. We're constantly talking about life. We're always reflecting and having conversation where we're breaking things down. He doesn't really do it for himself yet, but because that energy we're shifting into in 2027, she's not really activated fully. But when I'm around him, I get activated into doing that. So I'm constantly reflecting back to him about actions I take or my own inner thoughts or my own interactions, like the conversations I have with myself. That's a whole nother conversation of how we're all connected and how we all operate and we influence each other too, right? With
Oh, yeah.
our charts. So it's just there's so many things that we have available to us if we only knew how much is there for us to use. We wouldn't have excuses anymore.
Yeah, we really wouldn't. And I really, for me, I'm big on having supportive environment, having people to have those conversations and to find that place that you fit instead of trying to fit into something that's really not for you or where you're going anyway. I think that's super important.
Yeah, and my design is really to be a leader, to really create those communities. So I've built collaborations, I built communities around these, areas that I feel are missing in life. I'm getting ready to launch a new one called the Woo Woo Scoop, where it's all metaphysical. Like it's all the stuff we're talking about. It's people that I've always taught people how to tap into. I have a program called Magic School. Before that was soul activation. I've always taught people how to connect to their guides, how to connect to their own inner soul, how to utilize their gifts of mediumship, of psychic abilities, Akashic records. I can teach them on anything. And this is a community we're launching in the next couple months where I brought in 6 other instructors. So we're going to have all different types of classes, unique classes that they're gifted in, that we're going to bring to the community. And it's been really nice to find people, and people come to me and they're always like, I'm so happy there's a safe environment for me to just be me. And I was like, well, this wasn't available when we were growing up. This was
Yeah.
very frowned upon, right? Like I grew up Catholic and I was evil to be a medium. And I've been a medium since I was 3, like fully known, like aware of my mediumship skills since I was 3 years old, right? But it was always seen as evil. You can't do that. My mom can do it too. And a lot of my family members, it was okay within the family, but you left the house and that was, we don't talk about it. We don't do that stuff
Mhm.
here, so to be open and to freely give, I came out of the spiritual closet 3 years ago. And that was hard. It was really hard because there was really not a lot of us out. And then the second I allowed myself to come out, I found the people that were like me. I gravitated naturally to these people, and you do start to create that family. Um,
Mhm.
and it's just one of those things where it's like, the more you let go, the more you let go of fear is essentially what it is. The more you let go of fear and step into faith, the more is going to come to you. Because faith is an alignment of, you know, allowing things to happen, allowing things to come in and fall in for you. It's trusting that unknown, right? It's really allowing yourself to let whatever will be. I have a tattoo on my back, que sera, sera. Whatever will be, it will be. It's really just allowing things to unfold for you. Things don't happen to us, they happen for us.
Mhm. Unless, of course, you let life run you over.
Mhm.
And
It's
a
a
lot of that,
discernment. It's really using discernment.
it's discernment. It's getting on that track that is best for you. I mean, I love that you've got these communities going, because people have to find where they fit
Mhm.
instead of staying where they're comfortable, or where they're not really comfortable, but they're forcing themselves to stay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's really, we're going to be seeing more of that over the next few years. A lot of communities and collaborations happening,
Mhm.
um, because that's where we're heading more versus that competition, right?
Yeah.
Versus the competitiveness. We're really going to start unifying as a collective in, like, I call it little soul families. Like little soul families are going to start coming together. And it's just full of unconditional love and support, and we're going to be supporting, and they're going to merge and they're going to blend and crisscross in to each other, because we start to understand that there's so much out there, right? There's so much more out there when we do work together, when we are in unison, when we are deciding that, it's not me versus you. It's we, right? We get to live, we're here, we are the ones inhabiting earth, we are the ones living through this day by day by day, the slowest planet in all of the universe. To me, I feel like earth is very slow, but it's something minute by minute, second by second, we have choices that we have to make, right? And
Um,
until we don't until
Yes.
we're gone, right?
And the question that I would love to pose is, are you making those choices minute by minute for you?
Right. Yeah, and again, without the guilt too, right? Without the shame, without the guilt, um, because that's a huge thing that I think we as a society put on people, is a
Mhm.
lot of guilt and shame of like, well, you can't do that because of this, right? It's conditioned. It's all conditional. When God is, or source or universe, whatever people believe in, is supposed to be this unconditionally loving being or whatever, or this story, I call it a story. So I feel like God is a story that we tell each other. And it's like, well, if he's so unconditional, why are we placed with so many conditions in our lives? How can we take these conditions off of us? The more of the conditions that you take off of yourself, the more in alignment you become with source, with God, and realize like, oh, okay, it's not really him, it's the stories we tell ourselves. And I say he because again, that Catholic is so ingrained in me. But again, that doesn't matter. It's just a belief, it's just a story, it's just something that we've been constantly told and repeated for generations. So once again we detach to the story,
Yeah.
we get to really live the life that we desire if we allow ourselves to do that.
Yeah. All right. It is a 2:45. Please share where people can reach out to you and where they can find you at.
Yeah, so you can go to sierragrana.com, thewoowooscoop.com. We have a Facebook group, the Woo Woo Scoop community. My Facebook profile, Sierra Grana. You can just hit me up there. I'm always on social, so Instagram, TikTok, I'm on them all. But yeah, the best way is probably Facebook Messenger. You can hit me up in there, and I'll respond at some point. I'm pretty responsive in my communication, so.
Yeah. That's great. All right, guys, I hope you have a great Thursday and enjoy your coming weekend. And thank you so much for joining me. This has been another exceptional conversation.
Appreciate it.